Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. We will continue with the Lanke Cup. This is the round of 8 and Shin Jinseo is facing another world champion, Tuo Jiaxi 9 dan from China. Tuo Jiaxi is currently 34 years old. Back just 7-8 years ago, I used to watch a lot of his games, so I know this player quite well, but it could be he could sound a little unfamiliar to some of my viewers, mostly because he's now 34 years old and not he's still very strong like in China, but it's just not as known as the new and the younger players who are now 9 dan professionals. Shin Jinseo is playing as black and Tuo Jiaxi is playing as white in this game, which we all know that white starts out with a bit of an advantage. Black approaches, white also approaches. Black plays the keima, white now just plays the crawl and the jump. That's a very normal variation. Black now approaches the top, white just answers with the keima defense, and black plays the 3-space high extension, coordinating with the stones on the bottom as well. And here white decides to push on top. This is a very important move. It limits the potential that black has over here, and also strengthens the group. Shin Jinseo now plays the 2-space high pincer. So at this point, usually the response is for white to play the keima, but it is very well known in the Go community that Shin Jinseo knows these complex josekis just better than anyone else, right? Such as the Mies joseki, the 2-space low pincer or 2-space high pincer. Those are very complex josekis. So Tuo Jiaxi doesn't want to be out prepared, and therefore he plays the tenuki, which is a very common strategy when you don't know something, right? In the joseki, and you're afraid that your opponent has prepared a lot, you can just tenuki. Black now kicks, white extends, and black plays the keima. Back then, this would be a bad position for white, before AI came out, because we can see that white stones are quite heavy and under attack. But with the AI theory these days, it's not a big deal. So here you can see that white decides to just jump out and tenuki. Black now protects the moyo over here, right? If you go for an attack like this, first of all, you didn't really capture the entire 2 stones. The 2 stones still has rooms to maneuver. But more importantly, when white plays something like this, then your stones are also under attack. So that's why Shin Jinseo decides to protect the moyo and the group, and white decides to run out with the keima. Black pushes, white jumps. That's a very light and nice move. And here black plays rock solid. If black just extends, then white will jump here. And then this is not necessarily a great exchange. So Shin Jinseo decides to protect the attach here, right, by playing a very efficient move. Because if you don't play, eventually white will have this tactic going on, and this is a very fierce fight. White can crawl out like this, threatening the corner and threatening the 2 stones over here. Now in this particular situation, because white has 2 stones on the outside, this is especially dangerous for black. So it's very necessary for black to add another move, like what Shin played, to defend against that weakness. White now takes the vital point away from black. So this tiger's mouth really strengthens white and put pressure on black. Black decides to jump, and now white comes back to play the double approach. And now we have a very normal joseki playing out. So when white connects, black connects, and here white's book move. And I really like this move because it looks really nice, right? It's not only just a book move, it's coordinating with white over here, and we have a very nice moyo going on. Alternatively, of course, white can also think about playing the pincer here. This is also fine, and black will take this vital point away. So you can't get everything in the game of Go, right? When you get this very desirable point, then your opponent will take the other one away from you. All right, so in the actual game, white plays the kosumi, and black plays the shoulder hit. This is the book move. Maybe some of my viewers find this to be hard to understand, but the idea is that it looks like an overplay and there's a lot of weakness, but white cannot really exploit that weakness easily. For example, in the actual game, white decides to push a cut, which is the textbook move, but then black can make use of the weakness white has over here. Now, because white was able to get this push and cut, which is locally good for white, and white has to sacrifice something when fighting over here. Because if you try to get greedy and want everything, then what's going to happen is when black extends, there's an Atari over here and there's a ladder over here. It creates a miai. So now white is in an awkward spot, right? You have to give up the stone here or you have to give up stone over here. Either way, it's not pleasant. That's why most of the time white just Atari on the second line. That's the absolute theory. Black extends, white crawls, black extends, and white crawls again. And when black extends once again, in the actual game, Tuo Jiaxi decided to crawl once more. This obviously made a lot of sense, but I think one of the recommendations from AI that I really like is at this point, white can play Hane on the second line. I really recommend this move because when white plays the Hane Connect, it's some territory and also make sure that white is alive. Now, not only white is alive, also weakens black's corner. When black's corner is threatened, it means that this cutting point becomes very severe. So likely black has to use a move to like protect against this cutting point, and the most efficient way is probably to just play the second line Kosumi. And then we can see that it's just a nice move, right? Territory, security, threatening your opponent's security. So that's why it's also like one of the top AI recommendations. Alternatively, white can also think about Atari on top, black connects, and white just extends, protecting the giant moyo over here. But then, of course, your group over here will suffer a little bit because when black plays Hane Connect, you'll have to live like this. So as I said, the game of Go is really like about trade, right? You get a lot of profits here, then you have to suffer a little bit in compensation. Now in the actual game, white decided to crawl once again. That's also a way to respond to black. And black decides to extend the stone out. White played the Hane, black has to block on top, and white crawls into black's territory, tries to get into black's territory. And Shin Jinseo played the Tiger's Mouth, which is a very nice shape move, but it's actually like a very tiny inaccuracy according to AI. Here, AI would recommend black playing the Peep first when white connects and black needs to extend the stone out because the center is very important. When black extends the stone out, means that white's moyo kind of vanished. And this is also sente because black is trying to jump down. So when white comes back, after this exchange, black can now play the Keima instead of Tiger's Mouth. Now, this is obviously, this move is obviously not as thick as the Tiger's Mouth, but it's greater for points. So that's why it's slightly better because at the end of the game, points matter a lot more. Okay, so in the actual game, Shin Jinseo just blocked here, which I would probably have done as well in my game because just looks so natural, the shape and everything. All right, so still an equal game. White decides to extend the stone out, and black now plays the Keima in the center. This move basically lost some win rates, and people say it's a questionable move. I personally don't have a big problem with this. I think the reason it's AI think it's inaccuracy is because the goal of this is not like super clear. Like we're not exactly sure what black is trying to accomplish. But for me, to me, it looks like just an okay move because we're trying to we play here, preparing some sort of invasion in this area, but also slowly cutting off the connection between this group and the main group. So while this move made a lot of sense to me, AI would recommend black to extend on the second line because this happens to be a very big move. Now, the idea behind this move is that if white decides to respond over here, then this is a very favorable exchange that black was able to get for free. If white doesn't respond, which means that later on the fact that black can capture the 2 stones will make these 4 stones very strong. Therefore, that strengthens the center. So that's the idea behind the extending on the second line. But this obviously is very difficult for a human player to see. So at this point, after the Keima, Shin Jinseo is actually falling slightly behind in this game. But here's the deal. I watch a lot of Shin Jinseo's game, and this happens all the time. Like he just falls behind, in the early game, early to mid game. But eventually he will be able to come back. And that's the crazy part. His mid game and end game is so strong that these inaccuracies in the early games rarely matters. Okay, so the next move, we have a white cuts in the center, forcing black to Atari, and white now blocks on top, right? Trying to deal with this weak group over here. Black extends and white attaches on top. And instead of playing the Hane here, black is just focusing on what's important, the territory, right? This move also puts pressure on the 2 stones on top. Now, white is playing very clear moves by kicking over here first, and then kicking again, right? So this is a very common combination. After you kick here, you must kick over here. Otherwise, there's an attach, and it's very serious. So white has to kick, black extends, and now white jumps out. The 1, 2, 3, very common combination that you can learn from this game. So next up, we have black playing the extension. So the idea is that when white jumps out, this also puts a lot of pressure over here. So black decides to fix that pressure in a very efficient way by extending on the second line. Not only we fix, right, instead of our way of fixing is probably, oh, let's play here. But this is very inefficient, and it's not a good move, right? For professionals, they really have to maximize their efficiency. So not only I'm fixing my problem, but I'm also aiming at your weakness. And this happens all the time in professional games. All right, so at this point, white decides to extend out a very solid move, and now black has to kind of worry about the security over here. Shin Jinseo plays a rock solid move just to live the group over here. So yeah, this is just typical Shin Jinseo style. Like people, I think some commentator was criticizing Shin Jinseo for playing so passive, but I mean this is his style, right? And this is how he wins games, by playing really rock solid. And you make one single mistake or inaccuracy, and he will jump onto it, and then he will win the game from there. Now, the optimal way for black to play is still to peep here first, and then to play another peep after white connects, and black can get out. So black is not trying to live, or before black lives, black wants to get some counter attack in place. And that's the best way to handle this, which is nice. It follows the principle of counter attack. But what Shin Jinseo played was just making people feel very hopeless, because he's just like having no weakness over here. All right, so at this point, white decides to play this exchange, preventing black from extending on the second line. Black plays the tiger's mouth, and now white Hane connect, threatening the problems that black has over here. Temporarily, this is still a gote. Black is not going to allow white to get this incente. Therefore, black decides to go for some aji inside white's territory. So another good way to play here is for black to block on top, right? Fixing the aji over here and strengthen moyo. Or black can also think about jumping into the corner and take concrete territory. The issue with black playing the kosumi is that it tactically doesn't work. And maybe Shin Jinseo knows, and he just wants to leave some aji in here. The correct way for white to respond to this is to actually Atari on top. If black tries to fight, this is not going to work, because when white plays the Hane, black only has 2 liberties, and it's not possible to fight white here. If black plays the Hane, then white has the Tetsuji. Black connects, and white just extends, and we can see that this is going to be white kills black locally. If black jumps on the second line, then white can simply extend on the third line, threatening to capture black. So it doesn't matter how black answers, black is not going to win this liberty fight. Right? The most resilient is probably for black to connect. When you're in liberty fight, it's better to connect into a stick than making a bamboo shape. That's very common knowledge. Because when you play like this, white kicks like that, and I'll leave you to verify that black doesn't have that many liberties. So the most resilient is for black to connect like this, and white can also make himself into a stick, and this is going to be white kills black, because when black goes for liberty and then Atari, white connects. When black plays here, white can play the first line kosumi. We can see that this is white kills black. I mean, even if white plays this, we can see this is 3 versus 2, right? So this is probably better for white to play. So anyway, these calculations are not very difficult for both players. I'm pretty sure that at this point, Shin Jinseo would have realized that this is not going to work, and therefore he would just tanuki. But in the actual game, Tuo Jiaxi decided to not leave that much aji, instead just playing the attach on the third line, because he thinks that this is also working for white. But actually this leaves more problems, because now Shin Jinseo actually extends out and decides to fight it out. White plays the crawl, black hanes, white cuts, and now black plays the push. So locally this is fine, but because white also has 2 cutting points here, this makes the fight over here a lot more complicated. Black now plays the Hane, and white has to Hane on the second line. You can't play this because I can ladder the 2 stones. So white has to play on the second line, and here black plays the Atari and then extend on the second line. This is looking at obviously capturing the 2 stones. if white connects here, which he actually should do, then black's gonna do is to cut here, making use of, so this is locally dead, right? Black can only exploit the corner over here. So black has a very nice Tsuchi by cutting here. If white plays the Atari, black Atari on top, white captures, black connects, and white also has to connect. And here black can connect towards the outside. White extends, black blocks, and white now lifts the corner. So the result of this is that not only black was able to strengthen the moyo by playing a bunch of moves here, but also black managed to break through into white's territory. So this would be a better position for black. So what is the problem? Well, the problem is when black cuts over here, white's correct move is to actually play the tiger's mouth to threaten the 3 stones on the outside. If black pushes out, then white is going to Atari a bunch of times, and after black Atari over here, now black has to capture the stone over here. So black plays the Atari, white Atari, and instead of taking the stone right away, black is going to take a very big territorial move, right? Focusing on the territory instead of just the 1 stone here. White captures, that's a sente, black will just connect, and here white adds another move to protect the corner territory. So white was able to gain a lot of territory in corner, and black managed to capture stones over here. The game is still completely equal at this point. So this is the correct variation for both sides, actually. In the actual game, Tuo Jiaxi decided to go for another path, which I really like, to be honest, because it shows you that Tuo Jiaxi is a great fighter, and then he has very sharp reading. So in the actual game, white decides to Atari on top, and basically the idea for white is to protect all the weaknesses here and letting black capture the 2 stones. Because after capturing the 2 stones, white can still come back and kill the whole thing. So let's see what happens. Black Atari, white squeeze Atari, black takes, white throws in, and black now takes the stone. Here, of course, white has to pull this stone out to prevent black from living. Now black connects on the outside, and white squeezes black. At this point, we can see that this becomes a very complex liberty fight, right? Black is trying to kill white in here, and of course white wants to kill black, and there's like a little ko over here, so it's very complicated. Black now plays the liberty squeezing move, and white now plays the the tiger's mouth to make an eye. When you have an eye like this, then the liberty fight is better for you. Black Atari, white connects, and now black takes the vital point away from white. White crawls in the corner, black blocks, and white now plays the hane. Black now squeeze on top. White has to prevent black cutting here because this is too serious. White connects. All these are very easy to understand moves. So when black plays here to extend the liberties, white connects, and black now plays the Atari. White hanes on the outside, preventing the eye, squeezing the liberty, and black now plays a brilliant move to peep here first, because when the fight gets really fierce, then you will never get this exchange. This is the only time. This exchange happened, then black can go for the liberty fight. Black now hane, white Atari, black connects, and white takes the stone, forming a ko over here, and give himself more liberties. Black now goes for the connect, and now white decides to tanuki here. This is a very important middle game tactic or idea that I want to present today, is that when you are in this type of situation, now instead of fighting the ko right away, which you don't have a ko threat, what you can do is to create ko threats first instead of starting it right away. Because remember, when you capture a stone over here, it's only 2 points more for you. But when you play a move on the outside, it's worth way more than 2 points. So the idea of creating ko threats is a very advanced idea that takes a high skill level to appreciate. So let's see what happens when white captures like this, right? Black captures, and then white doesn't have good ko threats on the outside, so the only way to play is probably to clamp here. Then black will just capture, right? Black gained so much profits. And now you're trying to kill black. But because you spend an extra move here instead of over here, then what's going to happen is black can actually resist, right? Black can Atari and play the Kosumi. White has to block connection, and then black is going to play the tiger's mouth. And then we can see that black can still resist with another ko, right? So white lost all the profits over here, and this is still a ko. And that's kind of game over. But let's look at the difference when you try to create a co-threat. When you try to create a co-threat, like what Tuo Jiaxi has done in this game. So instead of initiating the code right away, we play on the outside. Now, if you as a black are really worried, then you'll take, then I can take, and then when you play here, okay, well now I can just add another move, making sure that you are, I'm just illustrating. This is not necessarily the best move. Probably something like this would be better. But let's just say white plays here. We can see black is clean dead. This stone is here instead of capturing the stone over here. And that's the amazing part about creating co-threats. Very nice idea. All right. Obviously, Shin Jinseo was not gonna play like that, right? That would allow him white getting 3 moves on the outside is not a great idea. So black decides to resist. White now plays the Kosumi. Black has to squeeze, and then white decides to start the ko right now. Black takes, white Atari, and black has to capture this ko anyway. And white now captured the stone over here. And now we can see black is still clean dead in here. In the actual game, Shin Jinseo decides to struggle and to run this group out. This shows you his reading skills, right? So if now in the actual game, white plays the Kosumi. If white plays the Hane, which is the correct move to play actually, I think Tuo Jiaxi was worried about the cutting, right? This is the only tactic that will get black out. Now, if you Atari like this, then black can Atari this side and just run out. So this is not going to work for white. So the only way is for white to Atari like this, but then black can flip Atari. When white captures, black connects. White plays the tiger's mouth, does a sente, and then white can play the Kosumi. It looks like a fantastic result for black, but actually it's not, right? The game is still very equal, or actually this could be dangerous for black. First of all, white is threatening to jump down. And also, this is also like, there's the Hane here to enclose the entire group. So if black tries to run out, then white jumps down, then these 2 stones are in serious trouble. So if white is able to capture such a huge corner, then that compensates a lot for what white lost over here. And the fact that the black's group doesn't have an eye and still has to connect back, there's a leak on the second line. This is not the leading game for black anymore. So sometimes you can't become too happy when you saved your dragon, but lost everywhere on the board. In the actual game, Tuo Jiaxi decided to play the Kosumi first, right? If black extends out, then white's going to jump down, and we have more or less the same results as before. But Shin Jinseo realizes the things that I just said, and he decides to protect what's outside instead of focusing on life and death here. And now white plays the Keima to capture Shin Jinseo's dragon. So still happened to be a trade, like black gained a lot here, but then white was able to capture the whole thing. The game is still equal, more or less, but it's slightly leading for black at this point. It's probably a 9 point on the board. After Komi, it's going to be about 1.5 or 2.5 points. All right, next up, we have black peeping here. White connects, and now black plays a move in the center, expanding the moyo and also threatening the aji in the center. But white blocks on top, and here black comes back to fix the shape. There was always a problem with the shape here. With this move, it's all gone. So very valuable move. White Hanes, black extends, and here Tuo Jiaxi realizes that he is behind. Therefore, he goes for the invasion. A very fierce move. Shin Jinseo pincers from the outside, and now white plays the push and then block in a corner. This is kind of like a warning move, right? White plays here to say, hey, you have a lot of aji, please spend a move to fix. However, Shin Jinseo, relying on his reading skills, decides to not care about it. Instead, black decides to extend and Hane connect to take the endgame. Now, this usually would be a sente, but white wants to test black first, so white decides to cut, and Shin Jinseo is answering correctly here by Ataring. White extends, black now blocks on the second line. If white tries to go for the liberty fight, then white's going to turn. Black blocks on top, white bumps into black, black blocks, white Hanes, and black simply extends. And then this is going to be black kills white actually in the corner because white has very tight liberties. The best way for white to resist is to connect. White, so now black will go into the vital point, and then we can see that eventually this is going to be black kills white. So at this point, white only has 2 liberties. White has to connect, black turns, and this is, the result is very clear here. So white cannot immediately go for this fight, and therefore in the actual game, he decides to take what's very important. This move not only gets a lot of territory, but also threatening to crawl into black. Black decides to play an exchange first, and then come back and block this threat. White now comes back to finally fix the things that he had to do a long time ago. You can't really allow this Atari. So now black gets the sente and plays a beautiful move in the center. Really love this move. If black plays somewhere else, for example, capturing the stone here, then when white plays here, we can see that gains a lot of extra territory for white, but black lost a bunch of territory as well. So this is an absolute must-play move at this point. White now plays the Hane, black plays the Kosumi to protect the weaknesses. White jumps, black connects, and here white plays the Tiger's Mouth, trying to break this chunk of territory. Here black decides to play a few exchanges here first, and then at this point, black cuts in the center, trying to attack the stone over here. White Atari, black extends, and white plays the Tiger's Mouth. This is a very nice move. You have to defend yourself because the shape here is very, very bad. So if you go for aggression, then black will also go for aggression by playing the Keima in the center. Now, white is just too weak here. The Hane, the cut, there's so many problems. White has to spend a move over here, and black pushes, white connects, and black can cut over here thanks to the stone. And we can see that, yes, you broke the territory over here, but then I have gained a lot more to compensate. So it's still a leading game for black. In the actual game, white played very solid, and black plays the Kosumi. This is a sente, and another sente. White has to block that, and finally, black comes back to play the Kosumi in the center, and making sure that this is all territory and cash now. All right, so white now turns, and this is where I find it to be really interesting, because usually we would just block on top and try to kill white, but Shin Jinseo is so solid when it comes to reading, and he plays the Hane. White Hanes, white Atari, black connects, and here white tries to struggle, but then this is all read out by Shin Jinseo, and locally this is just gonna be black kills white no matter what white does. So white decides to connect in the corner, black plays the Kosumi to kill the stone, to kill this group off. All right, so super solid stuff from Shin Jinseo. He did not back down under pressure. Rather, he took the end game very aggressively and very well played, I think. All right, so at this point, white is trying to make something happen because white is behind, not by a lot, still by the same amount almost. It's like 1.5 or 2.5 lead for black right now. But against Shin Jinseo, it just feels impossible. He's just so good at controlling the game and maintaining his lead. And he's just #1 player in the world for a reason. All right, so white squeeze over here, black extends, white squeeze once again, black connects, and white now plays the enclosing move. Black pushes, white blocks, and here black plays the peep. White now connects the stone over here, super big endgame, and now black cuts in the center. So this comes also with a lot of calculation. I think Shin Jinseo spent a lot of time reading this move. The endgame is very difficult. Against someone as good as Tuo Jiaxi, one mistake and you're just gone. For example, if you just cut over here, that leads to a lot of complications because now black can kick here, right? And your shape has a problem. If you connect, then I can clamp, Atari, and then we can see that this is a lot of endgame lost for black. But of course, if you just block here, then white gets this Atari here, and then fight you over here, right? Eventually you have to take, but then as we can see, this is like extra profit for free for white, and white is probably turning this game around. So very important for Shin Jinseo to play very accurately, or else you can easily lose the game. So at this point, black cuts as correct move, white Atari, black takes, and white plays the Hane connect. This is all sente, and white finally comes back to connect the stone here. Huge move. And black finally cuts over here, also very big, capturing the stone, also looking at capturing here. White now plays the Atari, black, this is the final attack that white can initiate. There's a lot of shape issues that black has, so white decides to Atari and run the stone. Here black starts a fight, they start a ko. Black, so white goes for a very obvious ko threat, but white takes back, black now peeps, white connects. So they're just going for a lot of code threats here. These are all very obvious code threats. So after a few code threats, and when they start to exhaust their code threats, at this point, Black decides to not keep fighting because there's still some code threats that White has. So Black decides to connect here, capturing the 2 stones. White keeps pushing, while Black gets a code threat for free, and now White plays the throw in here. This is a code threat, and then White takes back. Black now captures over here, preventing the 2 stones from getting captured. White captures. It looks like a disaster for Black, but actually this is all under control because Black now can take back. White plays the move here. That's a sente. Black has to block, or else the Liberty fight's going to have a problem for Black. So at this point, Shin Jinseo decides to play the Hane here. Shin Jinseo, it's so strong. Like most of us will just keep fighting this code, but then Shin Jinseo just reading everything out, and he decides to go for an endgame. And then he knows he's winning, and he's right. White has to block here, and then when Black takes back, White goes for another code threat, and eventually Shin Jinseo connects here, letting White connect in the center. So White gained quite a bit of profits in the center, but Black was able to get this Honey connect in compensation. Black Atari, White connects, and at this point, we're going into the small endgame. So they still played quite a lot of moves, but eventually Tuo Jiaxi lost this game. And so throughout this game, we can see that both players played quite well. But I think Shin Jinseo is just like better. He's just a better player here because at some point in the middle game, when Tuo Jiaxi had a chance to defend the Moyo here properly, even if Tuo Jiaxi managed to defend everything correctly, it doesn't mean he has a convincing lead in the game. The game is still very equal. And to defeat Shin Jinseo, you really have to play everything correctly. You have to be precise all the time. And it's extremely hard to do. But when you look at Shin Jinseo, he didn't make any obvious mistake in this game. Just some inaccuracies here and there. And I think at this point, only an AI can catch his mistakes easily. But for human players, it's just very tough. All right, so this has been the round of 8. So at this point, we are left with 4 players. 3 of them are from China, and 1 is Shin Jinseo. And then he has been fighting the entire Chinese national team for a while now. His next opponent is Fan Yin, 8-dan professional from China. I don't know Fan Yin that well. Yeah, so I'm excited to like comment on his game next. I don't know this player super well. Maybe I've done 1 commentary on his game. I'm not 100% sure. But obviously, if he can make it to the semifinal, then he's a very strong player. So we'll see if he can stop Shin Jinseo in the next game. So stay tuned. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next game. I'll see you guys in the next one.